The internet exploded after shocking footage emerged of Lil M slapping his father, Ems Harris, in public, leaving fans in disbelief and questioning what led to such a dramatic father-son confrontation. Was it a moment of pure rage, or is there something deeper brewing between the two? Eyewitnesses reported that things escalated rapidly when Lil M and Ems Harris were seen inside a luxury car engaged in a heated argument. What initially seemed like just another typical father-son disagreement quickly spiraled out of control. Sources say voices were raised, accusations thrown, and before anyone could intervene, Lil M slapped his father's face, leaving Ems Harris stunned. The incident was allegedly recorded, and fans are now eagerly searching for the leaked footage that has everyone talking. What could have driven Lil M to take such a drastic step? Did Ems Harris push his son too far? Or is there an untold family secret behind this shocking clash? Stay tuned as we dive into the insane details of this jaw-dropping father-son showdown. The tension inside the luxury car was thick, almost palpable. Ems Harris sat in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Lil M sat beside him, his jaw clenched, eyes burning with frustration. What began as a simple conversation, perhaps even an attempt at bonding, quickly shifted into something heavier, filled with old wounds and unresolved anger. "You never..." "Listen, man," Lil M muttered, shaking his head. His voice was low, controlled, but laced with frustration. "You always think you know what's best for me, but you don't. You never have." Ems Harris let out a heavy sigh, his fingers tightening on the wheel. "That's not fair," he responded, his voice just as low, tinged with the exhaustion of years of trying. "I've been trying to do right by you. You think this is easy being a father, especially after everything we've been through." Lil M scoffed, turning to stare out the window, watching the city lights blur by as his thoughts drifted elsewhere. Back to the times when he felt like an afterthought in his father's life, the moments when he needed guidance but received nothing but absence. The years spent on the sidelines, watching his father build a life with Yandy and their kids while he had to find his own way. "Don't even start with that, man," he said, his voice growing sharper. "You talk about being a father, but where were you when I needed you? Where were you when I had to figure everything out on my own, when I had to be my own man because you weren't there?" Ems Harris took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling with the weight of unspoken regrets. He knew his son had every right to feel the way he did, and he knew he had made huge mistakes. But he had tried to make things right. "I was doing what I had to do," he said softly, almost pleading. "I was handling business." "I gave you everything you needed," Ems Harris said, his voice softer now. "Maybe I wasn't there the way I should have been, but don't act like I didn't care." Lil M turned back to face his father, his brows furrowed, his breath sharp and controlled. "You always say that," he muttered, bitterness in his voice. "But words mean nothing when your actions don't match. You expect me to just forget everything and act like everything's fine?" Ems Harris ran a hand over his face, frustration building. "No," he admitted quietly. "I don't expect you to forget. But damn, can't we at least try to move forward?" For a brief moment there was silence, the hum of the car engine and the distant murmur of the city outside. But that silence wasn't peaceful. It was the calm before the storm. Lil M let out a hollow laugh, but it held no amusement. "Move? Forward?" he repeated, shaking his head. "How? How can you expect me to do that when you won't take responsibility? When you act like I should just accept everything you say?" Ems Harris turned his head, his patience beginning to wear thin. "You don't think I've taken responsibility?" he asked, his voice tight with frustration. "You think I haven't tried to fix things?" Lil M locked eyes with him, dark and full of anger. "You know what your problem is?" he said, his voice dangerously low. "You think that just because you've done better lately, it erases everything from before. But it doesn't. I'm still dealing with all of that. Even if you're not. Ms. Harris clenched his jaw, feeling the conversation shift from tense to explosive in a matter of moments. He knew his son was hurting, knew he had every right to be angry. But the way Lil M spoke, as if every effort Ms. Harris had made meant nothing, struck deeper than he had expected. "You don't get it," Ms. Harris muttered, shaking his head in frustration. Lil M leaned forward slightly, his eyes burning with frustration. "No," he snapped, his voice rising. "You don't get it." And that's when it happened. The breaking point. Ms. Harris scoffed, rolling his eyes, dismissing his son's pain with a simple gesture. In that split second, before Ms. Harris could even register what was happening, Lil M's hand shot out and struck him. The sound of the slap echoed inside the car, a sharp crack that shattered whatever restraint was left between them. Ms. Harris's head snapped to the side, his cheek stinging from the impact. His eyes widened, not in pain, but in pure shock. Lil M sat back, his chest rising and falling with deep, uneven breaths. His hands were still trembling, his face frozen in a mix of anger and disbelief. He had done it. He had actually done it. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of what had just happened hung in the air like a dark cloud. Slowly, Ms. Harris turned his head back, his jaw tightening. His breathing was steady, but the fire in his eyes was undeniable. "What the hell did you just do?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. Lil M swallowed hard, his heart pounding. He had acted on pure instinct, raw emotion, and now, for the first time, he wasn't sure what would happen next. The moment stretched on, agonizingly long, the tension so thick it felt suffocating. His cheek still burned, but the pain wasn't physical. It was something deeper, something that struck at his pride and authority as a father. He never expected this, never thought it would come from his own son. Lil M's breathing was uneven, his hands trembling slightly as he tried to process what had just happened. He wasn't even sure where the slap had come from. Was it anger, frustration, or years of pent-up resentment finally erupting in one unfiltered moment? Ms. Harris exhaled sharply through his nose, his jaw tightening as he turned to face his son. His eyes blazed with something hard to define. Hurt, betrayal, and something much darker. "You just laid your hands on me," he said, his voice unnervingly calm. Lil M swallowed hard, his chest rising and falling rapidly. I, he began, but no words came. What could he say? "I didn't mean it," would be a lie, because, in that moment, he had meant it. Ms. Harris let out a bitter chuckle, shaking his head. "That's how you feel?" he muttered. "You really have that much hate for me?" Lil M's stomach twisted. Was that what his father thought this was? Hate? He didn't hate him, did he? "This isn't about hate," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "It's about you never listening, never understanding where I'm coming from." Ms. Harris scoffed. "Oh, I understand just fine," he shot back, his voice now sharp. "I bust my ass trying to be there for you, and this is what I get?" He gestured to his still stinging cheek, his face twisted in disbelief. "This is the respect I deserve?" Lil M's nostrils flared as frustration surged through him once more. "Man, don't act like you're some saint," he snapped. "You talk about being there for me now, but where was all that concern when I needed it the most?" Ms. Harris slammed his palm against the dashboard, his patience finally snapping. "You think I had a damn choice?" he shouted, his voice shaking with undeniable frustration. "Like I wanted to be locked up? Like I wanted to miss all those years? You think I didn't lay awake at night thinking about what I was missing? Thinking about you?" Lil M felt his throat tighten, but he refused to let it show. He wouldn't let his father turn this into some guilt trip. "Thinking about me wasn't enough," he said coldly. "Because when you finally came back, you still weren't really here." Ms. Harris blinked, his breath hitching for just a second. That hit deep. The words hung between them, heavy and suffocating. The car, once filled with furious shouting, had now fallen eerily silent. Then, suddenly, Ems Harris threw open the car door. Lil M's eyes widened slightly as he watched his father step out onto the street, fists clenched at his sides. The harsh streetlights above illuminated his face, making the anger and hurt on his expression even more evident. Lil M hesitated for a moment, before finally pushing open his own door and stepping out. He wasn't about to back down, not now. "You walking away now?" he called out, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "That's real mature." Ems Harris spun around, his eyes blazing. Ems Harris turned so quickly his expression was almost unreadable. "You want to act like a grown man?" he said, his voice dangerously calm. "Then face me like one." Lil M's heart raced. He knew his father wasn't challenging him to a physical fight, but the words still felt like a provocation. In that moment, they were no longer just father and son. They were two men standing off, with years of unspoken pain and resentment ready to ignite at any second. The street around them was unnervingly quiet, with only the occasional car passing by in the distance. But within this charged moment, in the eye of this emotional storm, nothing else mattered but them. Ems Harris exhaled slowly, his expression softening just slightly. "Look, you don't understand everything, and maybe that's my fault," he admitted. "But don't think for a second that you have the right to put your hands on me." Lil M scoffed. "Yeah? And what are you going to do about it?" Ems Harris clenched his jaw again, but this time he didn't take the bait. Instead, he took a step closer, so close that Lil M could feel the tension radiating off him. "I don't have to do anything," Ems Harris said, his voice low and steady, yet carrying a weight of meaning. "You've already done it to yourself." Lil M felt something shift within him. The words didn't sound like a threat, but somehow, they hit harder than any slap ever could. Ems Harris shook his head, stepping back slightly. "You want to act like you're grown? Fine. But let me tell you something. Real men don't let their emotions make their choices for them." "Drop your thoughts in the comments below," the narrator continued, "because this is a conversation no one saw coming. And trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. This drama is far from over. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications because the next update is going to be even wilder. Stay tuned. This story is just getting started.